Who is Argoz? The goblin with the gem. Mirkdusk was not kind to the small. It was a realm of jagged stone and choking fog, of dead trees clutching at the sky and fortresses carved into mountain bone. The strong ruled, the cruel prospered, the clever survived. Argoz was small and clever. She grew up in the cracks between things, between crumbling walls and forgotten tunnels, between patrol routes and supply caravans, between the heavy boots of soldiers and the claws of whatever prowled just outside the torchlight. No one remembered who her parents were. By the time she was old enough to cling to a ledge with clawed fingers, she was already alone. What she did remember was light, not the harsh glow of Draven's forges or the sickly glare of void-touched experiments in the distance, but reflected light. The flash of a coin, the gleam of polished metal. The way glass caught the moon and threw it back. Other goblins hoarded food, weapons, scraps. Argoz hoarded shiny things. Her first treasure was a bent copper coin she found wedged in a crack in the stone outside a caravan route. Worthless to the traders, priceless to her. She'd sit for hours in her hiding hole, turning it between her fingers, fascinated by how the light slid over the worn surface. After that came more. A broken earring with a cloudy jewel, half a silver buckle, a tiny mirror cracked straight through the centre. To anyone else, junk. To Argoz, proof that the world held beauty even in a place like Mirkdusk. She learned to steal not because she loved danger, but because the most beautiful things were always guarded. She watched the city of Duskfall from high ledges and rooftop shadows. Draven's fortress dominated the landscape, a hulking mass of stone and iron, lit by ghostly blue flames and warded with magic that made her skin crawl if she got too close. The stories said no one broke into that fortress and lived. To Argoz, that sounded less like a warning and more like a challenge. Years of practice sharpened her into something more than a street rat. She became a rumour, a whisper, a shadow that slipped into well-guarded rooms and left with whatever glittered most. She was careful. She was fast. She never stayed in one place too long. Her home, when she allowed herself to think of it that way, was a lair tucked into the cliffs near Tanglewood Hollow. A narrow crack in the rock opened into a den carved by water and stubbornness. She lined its shelves with chains of trinkets, pretties woven together with cord and wire, each one a memory. Here, for a few rare moments at a time, she felt safe. Here, the war outside was something distant. Here, Lord Draven's name was just a story told in taverns and watched from afar. Until the job that changed everything. Duskfall and the Celestial Gem. The first time Ezran the Trickster walked into her life, Argoz nearly stabbed him. It wasn't her fault. He appeared in her path like a conjured bad idea, half-elf, half-smirk, cloak a little too fine for Fogroot's cheap tavern, eyes that never stopped assessing exits, angles, weaknesses. They crossed paths over the same coin purse. She picked it first. He tried to pick it off her. She introduced a dagger to his wrist. He didn't pull away. He grinned. "You've got talent," he'd said, "and no survival instinct. My favourite combination." Ezran had connections, illusions, tricks Argoz didn't. Argoz had the ability to go places even Ezran's magic struggled with. Narrow cracks, high ledges, blind corners. They ended up working together often enough that it could almost be called a partnership. Almost. One night, in a back corner of the Crooked Fang in Fogroot, Ezran slid a folded scrap of parchment across the table. A map, a vault layout, seals, wards, patrol routes. At the centre, marked with a careful circle and a flourish. The Celestial Gem. "Draven's toy," Ezran said, voice low. "He uses it for his projects. The Void Stone, the portals. The whispers say it's older than his fortress, older than Mirkdusk itself." Argos's eyes caught the little sketch of it. A perfect gleaming crystal, light trapped in stone. She didn't care what Draven used it for. She cared that it was beautiful and impossible, and guarded by every ward and blade the Lord of Duskfall could muster. "Why me?" she asked him. Ezran leaned back, smiled lazily. "Because you're the only one I know foolish enough to try." She should have walked away. She knew Draven's fortress. She'd watched it all her life. She'd seen what came back from its lower levels. Broken things, twisted things, things that remembered how to scream but not how to speak. Instead, Argoz found herself climbing the fortress wall under starlight, fingers and toes digging into old mortar, breath steady, heart pounding with the clean focus of a job. The wards on the corridors tingled against her skin, like spiderwebs charged with static. She watched the shimmer in the dust, found the gaps between lines of power, slid through them sideways. Where a soldier would have triggered them, a goblin small and cautious could slip like smoke. She picked the vault door's lock with the slow, reverent patience of someone opening a reliquary. Inside, on a pedestal, the celestial gem waited. It was more perfect than any of Ezran's sketches. Its facets caught the faint light and broke it into 1,000 colours that danced over the dark stone walls. Energy hummed around it, deep and steady, like a heartbeat. Argoz forgot Draven. She forgot the fortress. She forgot everything but the stone. She reached out and lifted it from its stand. For a moment, joy drowned everything else. Then the fortress tried to kill her. A deep, resonant tone rolled through the chamber. Glyphs flared on the walls, the floor. The vault door slammed shut with a thunderous boom. Her hands jolted as magic tore through the room, searching for the missing anchor. "Clever," she muttered, even as she cursed. "Paranoid bastard." She wasn't trapped for long. She never went anywhere without backup plans. An alchemical vial smashed against the door, acid and heat eating through the enchanted metal, just enough for her to wedge her small body through. But as she fled through the halls, the gem in her hands did something no treasure had ever done. It responded. Wards reached for it. It drank them in. The enchantments meant to pin her in place wrapped around the gem instead and stuck. Energy that should have detonated in her face sank into the crystal, the facets brightening. Argoz felt a jolt run up her arms and straight into her chest. The gem acknowledged her. Not as a thief, as something else. By the time she reached the outer wall, alarms screamed through Duskfall. Draven's forces flooded the courtyards. She blew a rope free, swung across a gap, rolled, ran. She almost made it clean. Lord Draven himself stepped into her path at the final courtyard, black cloak trailing behind him, eyes cold, cruel, and very amused. The duel in the courtyard was fast and vicious. She darted, climbed, dove. He hurled magic that tore up stone where she'd just been. She threw flash powder in his face. He answered with a wave of crushing pressure that nearly pinned her to the ground. In the end, she didn't beat him. She escaped him. That was enough. She fled Duskfall, lungs burning, gem clutched to her chest, laughing breathlessly at the impossible thing she'd just done. In her cliffside lair at Tanglewood Hollow, under chains of all the treasures she'd ever stolen, she lay on her back and held the gem up between her claws, watching starlight dance inside it. For the first time, she felt not just pride, but something dangerously close to hope. Then the world caught up. The shattering of Sanctuary. Draven did not issue warnings. He sent hunters. They found her lair not with clumsy patrols or random sweeps, but with methodical precision. Boots on stone, torches in the dark, voices too disciplined to belong to street thugs. Argoz watched from a crevice in the cliffs, teeth grinding, as men in Draven's colours tore down the life she'd built there. They smashed shelves, tore down chains of tokens and trinkets, snatched up what looked valuable, burned the rest. Her sanctuary was reduced to rubble in minutes. She could have leapt down. She could have tried to kill them. Alone. Outnumbered. Against men who would drag her back alive and let Draven finish what he started in that courtyard. She turned away. It was the first time the realm had taken something from her she couldn't steal back. Every refuge after that fell faster. A safe house near the old mines. Compromised. The hidden alcove under the broken bridge at Blackwater Gorge. Swarming with hunters. Her bolt hole in the high roots of the twisted trees beyond Fogroot. Already watched. They were tracking her routes, predicting her behaviour, closing the noose. In the end, she limped into Fogroot with mud on her boots, exhaustion in her bones, and the gem's weight digging into her chest more heavily than ever. If anyone could get her out of Mirkdusk, it was Ezran. If anyone would sell her to Draven for the right price, it was also Ezran. She found him in the Crooked Fang, seated at a corner table, pulling coin from the air to amuse a drunk crowd. "Always in trouble, aren't we?" he murmured when he dragged her into a shadowed corner. "Trouble follows me," Argoz said. "I need a way out. You owe me." He listened, eyes sharp, smirk fixed in place. "Word is," he said finally, "there's a bounty on you now that would buy a city. Draven wants his gem back, alive if possible, pieces if necessary." She felt cold. "Are you turning me in?" Ezran shrugged, lazy. "Depends. You want to make it worth my while not to?" She threw a mug at his head and ran before he could answer. Fogroot wasn't safe. Nowhere in Mirkdusk was. Hunters and bounty men weren't just tracking her, they were baiting her routes, spreading whispers, turning old contacts into liabilities. Every step felt like it brought her closer to a cage. In the swamp-like silence outside the town, pressed against a tree, mud soaking into her boots, Argoz finally admitted what she'd been avoiding. She was out of hiding places. If she stayed in Mirkdusk, Draven would find her. If he found her, he'd either kill her or drag her back to that fortress and tear the gem from her piece by piece. Ezran was a lot of things: coward, schemer, liar. But he knew pathways, old magic, edge places. She found him again, not in the tavern, but by an old standing stone half swallowed by moss and roots. "Changed your mind?" he asked. "Just show me the door," she said. He carved symbols into the stone with chalk and muttered a spell that tasted like iron and old rain. The air split, light ripped through the clearing. "Beyond this," Ezran said, "is a realm Draven doesn't control yet. Earth. After this, you're on your own, Argoz." She clutched the gem. It pulsed, uneasy. "So what else is new?" she muttered and stepped through. A new world. She tumbled out onto cold ground, choking on air that didn't taste like smoke and ash, and lay staring up at a sky that seemed too wide. No fortress lights, no sickly glow of experiments. Just stars reflected in a dark expanse of water stretching out from rocky shore. Behind her, tall trees. Ahead in the distance, clusters of artificial light. "Not Mirkdusk," she whispered. The gem hummed against her chest. The bond didn't weaken. If anything, the connection felt clearer, as if whatever Draven had wrapped around it back home had been cut away. She stumbled along the shoreline, following the lights, until she reached a road smoother than any stone she'd ever seen. When a car roared past, she dove for the ditch, heart pounding. "What kind of beast was that?" she muttered. "This place is madness." She crept to a gas station, watched humans drift in and out under bright fluorescent light. The smells of fuel and fried food stung her nose. She watched the way people moved, the way they ignored shadows, the way they left valuables unguarded. They were loud, careless, soft. Argoz found the streets of Traverse City the way she'd found Duskfall once, from the edges. She stuck to alleys. She memorized patrol patterns of police cars instead of soldiers. She snatched a wallet from an unsuspecting human and darted away, heart racing not from the theft but from the unfamiliar world. It didn't last. Shouts. Flashlight beams cutting across an alley, heavy boots on pavement. A chase as old as her childhood began again, just on cleaner streets. She dove into a storm drain, the cold concrete pressing against her back, water trickling past her boots. The gem throbbed. Voices echoed from above. "Down there! Move, move!" Now would be a good time for some magic. she muttered. The first flashlight beam sliced into the drainage tunnel. Before it reached her, something else moved in the darkness. A low growl rolled down the passage. Not human. Not goblin. Not anything she recognized. The men with flashlights froze. "The hell was that?" one whispered. Out of the dark stepped a shape with glowing eyes and teeth too long for a human mouth. They ran. The monstrous silhouette flowed forward, and with a ripple of motion, it shifted. Bones reshaped. Fur sank away. In seconds, where the beast had been, stood a human man, tall, lean, dark-haired, with a faint smirk. "You're welcome," he said. "I assume those weren't your friends?" Argoz stayed crouched, dagger in hand, gem pressed to her chest. "Who are you?" He lifted his hands in a gesture of peace. "Name's Caleb. Let's just say I handle problems in the night. And you, little goblin, are making a lot of noise." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know what I am?" "You're not exactly subtle," Caleb said lightly. "Green skin, teeth, eyes that look like they're planning 3 exits at once. I've seen worse." She didn't relax. Trust was a luxury Mirkdusk never gave her. "What do you want?" she demanded. Caleb's gaze flicked to the gem. "Right now, to keep you alive. Whoever's hunting you came through a portal. That makes you my kind of problem." She considered bolting. Running had always been her answer. Then something shifted in the air outside the drain. Caleb's expression tightened. "Too late," he muttered. Figures emerged at the mouth of the tunnel. Not cops, not locals, men whose posture and armor screamed Mirkdusk, even in this new world. Draven's hunters. "Time to run," Caleb said, grabbing her wrist. "Welcome to Earth, Goblin. Hope you're ready for the ride." The awakening of the gem. By sunrise, Argoz was in a small hidden space that Caleb called a safe house, and she called too many doors, not enough exits. The third person in the room looked her over with clinical interest. Raven dark hair, ember bright eyes. Calm in a way Argoz didn't trust. "This is her?" the woman asked. "Argoz," Caleb said. "Argoz, this is Evelyn." Evelyn examined the gem more than she examined Argoz. "You've been carrying that how long?" she asked. "Since duskfall," Argoz said grudgingly. "Duskfall," Evelyn repeated. "So, this thing came from your side? Figures?" She wanted to take the gem, study it, catalogue it. Argoz could see the hunger behind her restraint. Later, sunlight cut across the room in a thin beam. Curious, Argoz lifted the gem into it. It responded again. Energy washed over her. Her skin tingled. Her claws dulled. She staggered, grabbed a mirror and froze. Green skin faded. Features softened. The sharp lines of her goblin face smoothed into something human. Her eyes lost their predatory glow, though something of their intensity remained. A streak of her dark hair still spiked up stubbornly, a reminder. Caleb stared. "Well," he said, "that's new." Argoz touched her now human face with shaking hands. "What is this?" she whispered. "The gem," Evelyn said. "It doesn't just hide you. It adapts you. This realm has rules. You're blending." Argoz's first instinct was to snarl and reject it. Her second was quieter. For the first time in her life, if she stepped into a crowd, no one would point and scream goblin. For someone who had survived by being unseen, the idea of being invisible in plain sight was intoxicating. Unbeknownst to her, mages back in Mirkdusk were trying and failing to find the gem again. Their scrying spells hit a dead wall. "She's gone," one of them would say. "The connection's severed." On a different world, Argoz lifted her chin and tried on the new face the gem had given her. "Fine," she said. "If this thing is stuck with me, it can at least be useful." The Shadow Realm bar. Once the immediate threat of Draven's hunters was pushed back, Evelyn started explaining the rules of Earth. Not human rules. The other ones. "There are places between worlds. Evelyn said one night, amber glow eyes reflecting the lamplight. Nexus points, neutral grounds, good ones, bad ones. Like Duskfall? Argoz asked. Evelyn's mouth twitched. Less screaming, more deals. She told Argoz about the Shadow Realm bar, a place where the mundane world brushed against the deeper one, where humans walked in the front door and saw a dive bar, and beings like Evelyn, Caleb, and others walked through a back door and saw what lay beneath. Rules are simple, Caleb said. No open violence, no starting wars, no dragging your realm's baggage inside. You break the truce, you get removed. Removed how? Argoz asked. Evelyn smiled thinly. You don't want to find out. They took her there on a cold night, dressing her in a hoodie and jeans that felt wrong on her skin but helped her blend. The gem kept her in human form. Her eyes still watched every corner like a cornered animal. The front of the bar was ordinary, sticky floors, dim lights, battered stools, humans nursing drinks and regrets. The smell of alcohol and sweat hit her like a wall. Then Evelyn led them to the back, toward a door guarded by a presence that made Argoz's instincts flare. On the other side, the real Shadow Realm bar waited. Magic thrummed in the air like 1,000 whispers. The room was bigger somehow than it should have been. Creatures in human shapes and not-so-human shapes leaned over tables, huddled in booths. Runes glowed faintly on beams and bottles. A towering bouncer watched everything, the word truce practically etched into the set of his shoulders. Try not to stare, Evelyn said. Argoz stared anyway. That's when she saw Rose, seated like she owned the place, dressed sharp and dark, eyes that missed nothing and forgave even less. There was power in the way people moved around her, in how silence sharpened when she spoke. When Draven's captain walked into the Shadow Realm bar, the air changed. He wore the arrogance of someone too used to being obeyed. His armor didn't belong in this realm, but fear followed him anyway. When he struck Rose, hand cracking across her face in open violation of the truce, a collective breath caught. The bouncer moved, others tensed. It was one of those moments worlds pivot on, violence about to explode in a place designed to contain it. Darren stepped between Rose and the captain with a voice that vibrated with threat. Argoz watched from the edges, heart pounding, gem humming against her chest. Her instincts said run. Her curiosity said stay and learn who these people are. Rose made her choice. With a smile that had more bite than any blade, she pulled the situation back from the edge and turned it into a deal. Later, in a quieter corner, Rose's gaze landed on Argoz. Passing through? Rose asked, tone amused. Or planning to make a mess here? Argoz didn't flinch. Depends on who tries to kill me. Caleb stiffened slightly at her side. Evelyn watched, evaluating. Rose's eyes flicked to the gem-shaped bulge under Argoz's jacket, then back to her face. You've brought something very interesting to my city, little goblin. Argoz's fingers brushed the crystal through the fabric. Didn't bring it, she said. It refuses to leave. Rose laughed quietly. Good, she said. We might have use for someone like you. Argoz didn't fully understand what she was agreeing to when she made her first deal with Rose, only that it kept her from being alone. Alone was worse than risk. Burgers, milkshakes, and plans. For someone who grew up eating whatever she could steal before something bigger ate her, Earth food was an attack. Caleb put a cheeseburger and fries in front of her one night in a crowded diner, along with a milkshake so thick she almost snapped the straw. Argoz bit into the burger and paused mid-chew. This, she announced with conviction, is the best thing in this realm. Caleb snorted. You haven't tried the apple pie yet. She devoured both like they might vanish if she blinked. Rose, sitting across from her with a skeptical expression and a neat stack of documents, watched the display with one raised eyebrow. You're certain she's not part dire wolf? Rose asked dryly. She's just been hungry too long, Caleb said. For a few minutes, with grease on her fingers and ice cream brain-freezing her skull, the weight of the gem faded. The hunts, the fortress, Draven's shadow. All of it felt distant. Then conversation turned back to what it always did. Threats. Evelyn spread out notes and sketches of portals, facilities, names. "There's a training complex being used as cover," she said. "Federal on the surface, something uglier underneath. We need eyes on it." Caleb tapped the map. "We can't walk up and knock. We'll get swarmed, but a small team in the shadows." They both looked at Argoz. She swallowed the last bite of pie and wiped her hands. "I know how to stay unseen," she said. "You show me the layout. I'll tell you where it bleeds." The night she saw the pack. The first time Argoz saw the pack in action, she was perched in an alley with Caleb and Evelyn, peering around the edge of a warehouse. Police lights washed blue and red over the industrial yard. Officers moved in patterns Argoz was still learning. But it wasn't the uniforms that held her attention. It was the team moving just beyond the official perimeter. "The pack," Evelyn said quietly. "Gunner's team." Argoz watched a tall man leading them, his cybernetic arm gleaming faintly in the dark. His movements were controlled, economical. There was a weight to him that reminded her uncomfortably of Draven, except the fear around Gunner ran a different direction. Beside him moved others, a woman whose eyes seemed to catch every flicker of light and shadow, hands hovering near tech that hummed with soft power. A man with a shotgun slung casually, posture relaxed but finger never far from readiness. Others fanning out, each with purpose. "What are they doing here?" Argoz asked. "Cleaning up what others won't admit is a mess," Caleb said grimly, "and probably cursing whoever let it get this bad." They watched as a void-tainted figure, veins dark, eyes wrong, was dragged out. Not killed, contained, managed. Argoz's throat tightened. "He doesn't look like a victim," she said. "He is," Evelyn said. "The drug did that." Later, on a different street, Argoz pointed to a dark shape slipping along the perimeter, then vanishing mid-step. "He was there," she said. "Then he wasn't." "Their scout," Evelyn replied. "He moves through shadows." Argoz watched the space where he'd been, a professional curiosity prickling. Another shadow worker, another creature who survived in the in-between. Earth's war, she realized, was different from Mirkdusk's. Not less brutal, just better hidden. And for the first time, she understood where the path in front of her was leading. Not back to Duskfall, not back to a cliffside lair that no longer existed. Forward. Into a fight alongside people like Caleb, Evelyn, Rose. And maybe, someday, the pack. Who she is. Argoz is not a chosen one. She isn't a prophecy. She's a goblin who loved shiny things and stole from the wrong man. She's a thief who took the celestial gem, and in doing so, crippled Draven's access to power he thought was his by right. Painted a target on her own back. Forced herself into a war that spans realms. What shapes her isn't destiny. It's choice. The choice to keep running when Mirkdusk tried to cage her. The choice to step through a portal into a world she didn't understand. The choice to trust Caleb and Evelyn when she had every reason not to. The choice to sit down with Rose and bargain instead of fleeing. The choice to climb up a warehouse wall on Earth because someone needed eyes in the dark. One day, when the Alliance of Realms is fully forged, when Echo Division and the Pack move in concert, histories will mention the Celestial Gem as a pivotal artifact. They'll talk about portals and wars and alliances. But somewhere in those histories, buried between grand titles and cleaned-up reports, there'll be a line about her. The gem chose a goblin thief in Mirkdusk, and she chose not to break. That's who Argoz is. And this is only the start of her story.